This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Authority Strike Herbicide from FMC. One application of Authority Strike Herbicide delivers a powerful one-pass burn-off to start, followed by extended weed control later. See your local retailer today for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Sean Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout-out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Hope you're having yourself a great week, whatever is happening on the farm, the ranch, or in the barns. And today we're going to dive into, well, honestly, not a great topic. It's a market outlook. I don't know if you've been, you know what, you'd be happier if you had taken the ostrich strategy and put your head in the sand. And if you pull that head out of the sand, you're going to see, wow, we have, dipped is not the right way to put it. Slid is not the right way to put it. But it has been a real downward spiral in these futures markets, and we're going to make some sense of it, or try to at least, with Neil Townsend of Grain Fox here today. We're not going to talk about specific commodities. I want to hit on the overall commodity complex and try to get some sort of, I guess, better understanding in terms of this slippity slide that we are currently on and still searching for a bottom. And I'm thinking of that Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index data that we had from January, where, you know, farmers' opinion of the market continues to bounce around, bullish versus bearish, and we're in bearish sentiment now, and that fits what we're seeing in the futures. But the other side is, as we've talked about, is the fact the loss in confidence. And loss in marketing confidence is more of the concern. And I understand why, because if I'm undersold and trying to make sense of this, I'm kind of questioning my marketing as well. This has been a tough time for farmers to try to figure out what the best strategy is from a marketing perspective, indeed. And I've been hearing that from you as I've been doing my speeches over the past month. I continue to hear frustration from farmers on that one. We're also today going to have a product spotlight. We're going to hear from Jordan Breezewa. He is with FMC. They're going to talk about Authority Strike, and Lindsay's going to be doing that, so looking forward to it. And then speaking of the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index, I want to hit on current farm financial performance and look at how age is an interesting piece there. Indeed, age is a bit of a factor when it comes to how you feel about your current farm financial performance. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. We'll also have some time for the top ag news stories of the day. If you have any feedback on today's show, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. We got to some of your feedback on yesterday's show. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can always call that RealAg feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. Speaking of feedback, I am interested in your thoughts here. There are reasons, I believe, to be critical of the federal government in Canada for their policies around agriculture, or policies in other departments that actually impact agriculture. The list is, it's there. It's long, and I don't dispute that. What I just don't totally understand is, over the weekend, we saw some tweets from Minister McCauley, the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food in Canada, who is on a trip to the Indo-Pacific region. He's actually landed in Malaysia. And we were hoping to interview him this week, but we're actually going to, I think, have him on next week once he returns from this trip. I want to hear all about it, because the Indo-Pacific region is very, very critical for Canada's trade strategy going forward, especially as it applies to agriculture. Okay. And he tweeted a picture of himself enjoying, after they had landed, enjoying some Atlantic Canadian lobster. On the ground, I can't remember the exact tweet, but on the ground in Malaysia, promoting Canadian agriculture like this great Canadian lobster I'm eating. Essentially is what he said. People freaked out, saying it was out of touch, saying he's in Malaysia on the Canadian taxpayer dollar, eating expensive Canadian lobster. Some people tied it to the carbon tax, and how could you be a hypocrite to believe in a carbon tax, yet you're flying around the world? Okay. Let's just all take a deep breath. This is what we want him to do. Is it not? Don't we want the agriculture minister going to talk to customers in the markets that we're trying to increase our market access and our market share? Like I said, I think there's reasons to be critical of Minister McCauley. I'm not sure eating lobster, Canadian lobster I may add, in Malaysia is one of them. And I saw somebody respond to the tweet in sort of a rebuttal to some of the outrage, saying that, if he had been eating Malaysian food, people would be upset that he wasn't, promoting Canadian food abroad. Basically, we're just upset. And people are frustrated, and I think they are, a lot of this stems back to the frustrations with some of those policies, the federal government, like I discussed. And the carbon tax is one of them. What we shouldn't be criticizing Minister McCauley for is actually doing his job. Because we want him to do his job. And this trip and other trips like it are a part of his job. So I think we should back off on some of the outrage, and hopefully they have a successful trip. And I'm hoping that we're going to get him on here on the show next week to talk about what he heard while on the ground as they open their Indo-Pacific office in the Manila, Philippines as well. That's part of this trip, I would imagine. And CPTPP in the Indo-Pacific region, very, very important for Canadian ag products, pork, beef, Canadian seafood, just to name a few. But hey, send me your feedback. What do you think about it? Do you think he was out of line landing in Malaysia and eating Canadian seafood? Was it a bad look? Let me know. SHaney@RealAgriculture.com. I got a feeling the audience is going to be kind of split on this one, but I want to hear your opinions. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into the markets. We got Neil Townsend of Grain Fox with us and see if he can make sense of what's happening with all this red on the screen. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Want a product that will give you nitrogen all season long? Then you want to try Envita. Envita gets directly into the cells of the plants, and it's easy to apply, foliar or in furrow. Envita provides the flexibility you need for your farm practices. Whether you want to reduce your nitrogen and maintain yield, or maintain your nitrogen and increase yield, Envita fits your farm. Envita SC formulation is OMRI registered. To learn more about Envita, visit azotic.com. That's AZOTIC.com.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
FP Genetics relentlessly brings innovative new seed genetics to Canadian farms, ensuring growers, breeders, and farmers are supported and viable. Being a valued partner on your farm for decades, you can expect the continuous pursuit of the best genetics. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's strong portfolio of wheat, durum, barley, oats, peas, and rye, or contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. Co-op, here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at co-op.crs/farm. That is Co-op. Let's talk markets and try to make some sense of this free fall. This looks like a person that's jumped out of an airplane and still waiting to pull the strings on that parachute. We're talking to the lead analyst at Grain Fox, based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. It is Neil Townsend. Neil, how are you doing today?
It's going well. How about you?
Well, we may be well. The markets are not. Neil, I guess the only way to put this is, what the heck is going on? The charts are nasty. They're ugly. There has been more red on the screen as of late than green. What is creating this big slide downwards?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would immediately identify demand as the culprit and say, like, there's been some weak demand. I would beg to differ. I mean, I think if you look at the overall sort of demand that's in the globe, it's on pace. I mean, wheat export demand should be up a little bit this year. Corn demand is up a little bit this year, and soybeans are sort of, relatively flat. But I mean, and I'm talking overall global demand. So I don't think it's demand. I think what's happened is just that, farmers grew big crops in a lot of different jurisdictions around the world. Supplies are probably heavier than what the USDA was estimating for carry-in for this year. And I just think there's lots of competition, and the competition is driving the price down. And, we've got willing sellers, and, buyers know this and are playing a little bit hard to get. I mean, there are some problems with finances and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's just a case of there being, more sellers than buyers at the moment in terms of, the willingness of people to sell, and the buyers are kind of picking that off.
Are we, at what point are we not oversold here? Where where we can expect a little bit of a, maybe not a long-term sustained bounce, but some sort of a rally here, because we have gone so far so fast.
Well, I mean, again, looking at the futures positions of the non-commercials, I mean, they are sort of like at multi-year lows, or in some cases almost at record positions on the short side. And you could say to yourself, well, that once the boat starts to tip the other direction, everybody will run on that side and we'll flip it over into sort of a bull market or something like that. I mean, I don't necessarily see it like that, because, I mean, first of all, everything is true until it's not true. So, the fact that they're short doesn't mean that they can't go more short, and that's what they've been doing. I mean, they probably need at this point something real and something tangible. Some people have said that, maybe when interest rates start to get cut, that will help. But that's sort of a non-supply and demand balance sheet thing. That's an outside factor. I mean, that might happen. But on the sort of, if you were looking at fundamentals as a driver of the futures, I mean, you would kind of look forward and say, well, where are there going to be like narrowing ending stocks, tight ending stocks? What would kind of give them an indication that there's sort of like a tighter supply, so that, they should be, looking at getting, on the other side and going long. And I don't see that for the remainder of 23, 24 necessarily, unless we start to have a big sort of perception that we're going to have, a drought in North America. And there are maps. I mean, there are drought conditions right now in Iowa, a big one centered there, and it seems to be growing. And, Western Canada is very dry. But again, it's February 21st. Very few crops are planted in Iowa or planted in Western Canada at the current moment. So, we can't really say that the crop is drought impacted yet. So we'll have to wait and see. And if the drought persists, yes, that could be something that triggers a bit of a reversal. But if we see situation where, the conditions improve and we get a representative crop or an average crop or even a trend crop, I mean, that's just going to add to the balance sheet. And we're going to have a situation where, 24, 25 might be more oversupplied than 23, 24.
Okay. Well, so we've talked about the bad side of this. Are there positive, like what positives need to come together? You mentioned interest rates. That one's a little like that to me smells of like short-term rally, not anything to sort of, form a base here to build from. Is it basically cheering for poor weather conditions again? Because that just feels counter to our profitability on farm, where it's been so dry in certain pockets for so long. We need some moisture. Feels like we got kind of a double-edged sword beating us down here.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what I'll say about sort of like other signals like interest rates or that type of stuff. Like I'm not a particular expert in that area. I'm just repeating what somebody said there.
Yeah.
So let's focus on the fundamentals. What happens has to happen on the fundamentals. And what I would say is that, the unfortunate truth is we're probably in need of, having a weather wreck somewhere to kind of really reverse the trend because, production and stocks are building. Now, one of the criticisms maybe people could level to is that the USDA is not capturing the real stock levels that are in Russia or the European Union in particular for wheat. But we've seen South America sort of wobble a bit, but I mean, is a wobble enough to go from sort of 165 million bushels, a million tons of soybeans down to 155 million tons of soybeans, or some people are at 145 million tons of soybeans? Like, that's certainly going to help. But I mean, broadly speaking, there's no real concerns on the feed grain side. There's ample corn. Bigger crops are projected to come from Ukraine, Russia, even the European Union are probably going to have good corn crops at this point. So then you'd have to say, like, is there enough sort of adverse weather going to happen in the U.S. that we could see sort of a cut to the prospect of corn yield? But the problem there is, like, in the USDA Outlook Forum, they estimated, I think, 181 or 181.5. I can't remember the exact number for bushels per acre. Even if they came in at 175, that's a supportive, but not a trend breaking yield. I think it has to be like, 170 or lower. And I think that's very hard to get with, like, unless you have like prolonged, serious drought issues. And a lot of the weather models show that actually the North American drought is due to break and that they're projecting more or less a relatively normal growing season. Now, those models can change, but that's what they're saying. So, yeah, I mean, and then you look at the demand side, and the only comment I'd make on the demand side is that, there's been a lot of poo-pooing about China, and China's not there. But, China's demand this year, I mean, could you really ask for more? I mean, they've imported a record amount of wheat, record amount of corn. They've imported large volumes of sorghum. They've imported barley. They've imported, the one thing maybe they're down on is yellow peas, but I mean, everything else is either at or above sort of, record levels. So, I don't think China can offer us more. And maybe the final point I make is, like, we should be watching probably the Indian crop for a lot of reasons in Western Canada for pulses and also for wheat, even for canola, a little bit in oilseeds. But, India, I don't know if we ever get a full picture of what happened there, but what I would say about India is that, if they were to have sort of stumble here in the next 6 to 8 weeks with, like, seriously high temperatures that, reduce the yield potential for the wheat, and they actually policy wise say, oh, okay, we're going to import, 5 or 10 million tons of wheat. I mean, that would have an impact on the wheat prices at least.
Okay.
But that's a what if.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's move into strategy here before we wrap up. I've been hearing from a lot of analysts, farmers undersold on 23 crop for sure, even on 24 crop. I was with a group of producers in different times over the past 2-3 weeks, and one of the comments I continue to hear is, what the heck do I do with my unsold 23 crop? Because as I've watched this, not a falling knife, I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but as I've watched this slide lower, I've grown more and more hesitant to sell because it's like, oh man, now I'm stuck. What do you do?
Well, okay, and I mean, as always, it depends sort of at what level you're sold at, overall.
In general.
I mean, I think right now you can't be betting like 50 or 60% of the crop for 23, 24. You got to whittle that down to sort of like 30% or something. And then the strategy with that last 30% is basically, okay, we are dry in North America, in Iowa and Western Canada. We don't need to bet on a drought we just need to bet that there's a perception that there is a risk. And then when those perceptions sort of, get to their, it's hard to pick the exact moment, but as they increase, that's when you should be looking to sell. So, right now we see like corn, or soybeans or wheat, they're kind of almost at their lowest levels of the year. I mean, we had a bit of a bounce yesterday, giving up a bit of that today. But I would say that probably, for that final portion, anywhere from, 15 to 30%, I think you're probably looking to really be active in March and early April if those perceptions continue. And, for new crop, I think it also sort of says like a lot of farmers would probably be out there saying like, oh, well, new crop, I mean, the prices are so low now, we should see a rebound in new crop. Actually, there is a risk that 24-25, we see even lower prices, especially if the U.S. corn ending stocks continue to build. I mean, they're estimated at 2.5 billion bushels this year, but if they get the acres planted and they get, the yield to 181 or 175 and above, I mean, corn stocks could build there unless there's a significant export outlet, which there's just too much competition to really guarantee that they're going to export a record volume or a higher volume of corn. So, for 24-25, I also think at the same time that you're looking for the perceptions of drought in Western Canada or in the US sort of mounting, I think that's when you would start to sell some, to increase the amount that you want to sell. And one rebuttal to that would be, well, hey, I'm the person who's dry. How can I possibly sell? But, you got to sell sort of some because, the droughts, as we've seen over the last few years in a lot of jurisdictions, we've seen, oh, it looks like a drought. And then, oh, lo and behold, no drought. And the crop has really fared very well.
Yeah. Well, and, the other thing farmers have been saying to me is, listen, for the last 3 years, the best time, or best strategy has been to just hold, right? Don't sell early, hold, because the market has rallied through the winter months. That has not been the case here this year at all. So we have to adjust our strategy for sure. And just like there's recency bias with the farmer in terms of their marketing strategy, the funds are going to have the same sort of recency bias, because last year we tried to kill the corn crop routinely, like we usually do, but even more so last year. And boy, the yields just blew us away in terms of where they were, considering how much adversity there was. As we do hear rumors of poor conditions through the growing season, we always do. I think we may see some of the funds and the market react with a little less, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
I would agree with that, Sean. I mean, I think like once bit, twice shy. And again, like I think that, one of the problems right now is that there's just not a lot of love for, the ag space from the non-commercials, right? And, that's a hard trend to dislodge. I'm not smart enough or aware enough to know, but I mean, they say that, somewhere upwards of 94-95% of trading is being done by computers and algorithms right now. And you just think like it's all relative, right? Like, and if they're looking for opportunity and excitement, and the computers are trying to find something out. I mean, unfortunately for the ag space, it's not very exciting right now. And even in the best case scenario, without like sort of a 2012 like corn drought, I mean, what would the repair be to the prices going forward if we get sort of even like say 2 or 3% below average yields? I mean, it's going to take more than that. And I just, I don't want to be a downer. I'm just saying that, we might get there, but it's going to be, a bunch of different stops along the track to get there. And there's probably not going to be one moment where we see that. Now, some of the hope that we have, or not hope, but some of the thing is like, will there be a bigger impact by biodiesel in 24-25? Will there be more? Like I noticed today, like Boeing was complaining about the lack of availability of renewable aviation fuel. I mean, a lot of these people want to do some greenwashing. They want to get something. The mandates are there. So, the biodiesel era is maybe just in its infancy here. And that could be something just like the ethanol era that kind of, once it started to gain traction, it sort of outpaces the yield adjustments or the acreage gains that they can make now. But, I thought maybe we'd see some of that in the last half of this year. I don't think we really will, but maybe in the second or third quarter of next year, we'll start to see a more defined story about what the growth in biodiesel is going to do.
Great stuff. Hey, Neil, thanks so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. And hopefully next time we chat, we're higher than we are here today. That's all I can say. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you very much.
FP Genetics, innovative seed genetics for Canadian farmers. Contact your local FP dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region. Visit fpgenetics.ca to learn more. We'll be right back on Real Ag Radio. We got a product spotlight with FMC Canada coming up right after this.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
Whether you're a rookie soybean grower or a seasoned vet, the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com has exactly what you need to stay in the game. The latest research and the best agronomic advice from industry experts, along with local and global market coverage on demand, anywhere, anytime. Make this growing season your best growing season with the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com.
Co-op AgZone Field is a digital agronomy tool designed to help optimize your operation. Through integrated layers of satellite imagery, soil maps, yield data, and more, Co-op Grow Team members use AgZone Field to provide organized, timely, in-season data, allowing you to make informed management decisions quickly and effectively. Trust your Co-op Grow Team to support your operation with AgZone Field. Contact your local co-op today.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I'm Lindsay Smith, and it's time for today's Product Spotlight. Joining me from FMC, it's Jordan Brisebois. He's the Product Manager, Extended Weed Control and Grower Programming for Canada. Jordan, welcome here.
Hi, Lindsay. Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
All right, so we are going to talk about Authority Strike herbicide. What is it?
So Authority Strike, Lindsay, is a brand new product launch for us. It is a combination of probably two of the most proven Group 14 modes of action available in the Western Canadian market space. It is the newest member for our Complete Solution family of products. And, I'll talk about Complete Solution stuff in a little bit later, but it's registered ahead of pre-seed to wheat, field peas, flax, chickpeas, mustard, and soybeans. It has a very broad list of weeds on the label. In particular, the ones worth highlighting are kochia, lamb's quarters, wild buckwheat, and many other tough broadleaf weeds. Again, the power of two of the best Group 14s available to growers in Western Canada, and we're really excited to launch this product this year.
All right, so when you say a Complete Solution product, what does that mean?
So everybody in Western Canada, or many growers, I shouldn't say everyone, knows about Authority 480, which is our extended weed control brand. You put the product down, once it's activated by moisture, creates a soil barrier. The difference with this product is it has a burn-off component and an extended weed control component. So for us, that's what we call a Complete Solution product, where we have a combination of burn-off plus extended control. So a grower can go out with this product, tank mix it with their glyphosate, get a nice, strong, fast, powerful burn-off. And then they also get the soil applied product, which waits till it gets moisture activation from a rain. Once the rain comes, activates that part of the product, then we get this great soil barrier with, residual control for weeks into the season. So that's what we mean when we call it a Complete Solution product. And, we have a bunch of them in that portfolio, and that family of products. Authority Strike is just the newest one.
All right, and certainly that sort of extended window is becoming, as you mentioned, very important with some of these very tough to kill weeds. So, so that is a key there. Now, of course, what would you say is the most important benefit of Authority Strike?
So, for me, I live in southern Saskatchewan, so we use Authority on our farm. We see lots of growers in this part use it. Again, the key difference with Authority Strike is we're seeing growers now more than ever in a lot of soil zones, not all of them, but essentially when the snow is gone and the soil warms up even to a point where they can get some early product or early crop in the ground, they want to be able to do that quickly. So they only have time for one pass with the sprayer. And that's the big benefit with Authority Strike from my perspective. The grower window gets tight in the spring. They want to get all the crop in the ground. That's the top priority. They want to get a really clean, complete burn off and then have the residual product there for later. That's what they're looking for. That's what they get in this product versus, hey, I'm going to go out really early with my sprayer and just put my Authority down. That's one pass with the sprayer. Then, I'm going to come back later and do a burn off because I know weeds are going to come up. I'm going to do two passes. For us, this product sort of solves that dilemma in that they can go with one pass, with one product, get the burn off, get the extended control product down, and then, they can get their crop in the ground quicker, save a pass with the sprayer, save some fuel, save some time. And so we think that's a real advantage to growers to look at a product like this in the spring.
All right, and for growers, of course, who may have questions or if are looking for more information, where can you send them to get all that?
All right, Lindsay, I have this in front of me. This is the third year that I do these types of things with you guys, and I am 0 for 2 on getting our website correct. I have it in front of me this year. If growers have any questions, they can obviously go to the expertise that they get from their local retailer, which is a great source of information. They can talk to their FMC account rep. However, they can also go to our website. And I want to make sure I got this right. It's ag.fmc.com/CA. So that's the Canadian version of our website. Lots of great information there on Authority Strike and all of our other products in our portfolio. And again, probably the best place to go is either your FMC account manager or local retailer.
Absolutely. All right. And you nailed it. We got that for you. Okay. Jordan, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lindsay. I always have fun doing these things.
Alrighty, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
CDC Endure is a new oat line from Alliance Seed. High yielding with excellent disease resistance and the quality end users ask for, all in one great oat variety. CDC Endure provides the high beta-glucan levels to make heart-healthy products like breakfast cereals. For more information on CDC Endure oats, as well as any other products from Alliance Seed, check out allianceseed.com or visit any Alliance Seed authorized retailers. Does your end stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
At Alliance Seed, good stories grow with the highest quality seed backed by committed retailers and years of research in yield, disease resistance, maturity, and grain quality. Start writing the next chapter for your operation with Alliance Seed. Learn more at allianceseed.com. Okay, I want to talk to you about the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index, and I was going through the full slide deck. It's like 250 slides. And one of the things that stood out to me is we've talked about the current farm financial performance. Now, remember, this is the question where we're saying, is your current farm financial performance better off, same, or worse off than 12 months ago? Okay? And on the whole, we have seen Canadian producers say, they've said it's an 86. So 100 is neutral, right? And and we're at an 86. So we have continued to slide lower. And in fact, if you look at going back to January a year ago, it was like a 119. So we have just continually just fallen from that point. From last year, the index high at this time to now, we have just moved lower. And you've heard me talk about it here on the show. Future Farm financial performance has, trended higher, but now they've basically run into each other. They're virtually the same, okay? Which is also something we've seen kind of change. What is interesting to me about this is not the fact that people are feeling worse about their current farm financial performance. Because listen, you've been doing your crop budgeting, and or maybe you're in livestock and you've seen those, budgets for the upcoming year. People are feeling worse off about their current situation. Okay? So all of that, I'm not surprised whatsoever. There are a few things about current farm financial performance that do stick out to me. They do. And one of them for sure is age. Okay? So I'm going to ask you, if you were to look at the different age brackets that we have in Canadian agriculture, and if I was to say, which one of those do you think feels the best right now about their current farm financial performance, who would you guess? Okay? Think about it. You've thought about it? You got your answer? Okay, let's look at it. It's actually not the oldest. It is not even people that are in mid-age. And the reason I point that out first is I think that's the way a lot of you probably guessed. Because a lot of you think that the younger generation has been too aggressive. They have never lived through the 80s. And so as we've seen things slide, you would think that some of the older generation, maybe, and we're really broad brushing it here, I realize this, so there are many, many examples to the contrary, but that they would maybe feel better about themselves than some of the younger people. And the younger people would be like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. I'm overextended. Too much debt. Market's going down. Uh-oh. What's interesting is that it's the under 35 aged group that feels better about their current farm financial performance than the rest of the age groups. So 39% of people under the age of 35 said that their current farm financial performance is better off than a year ago at this time. Now, if you look at 65 and over, which is the lowest, actually 55 and over. 55 and over that's the lowest, 17%. Actually, if you look at 65 and over, 41% of them said that they are worse off than a year ago, where under 35 is only 21%. Now, there is a good amount of people in all of these age categories saying, I'm about the same, okay? Anywhere from 39% to 42 or 47, it looks like, 47. So there is a substantial amount of people that feel that their current farm financial performance is essentially the same as it was a year ago. But it does stick out that people under the age of 35 feeling better at this time. And what's also kind of fascinating about this is if we look at the age categories and how they've answered this question over the period of time, all age categories have dropped. Okay, we've seen that slide lower. But the difference between how people felt in January of 23 versus January of 24, when we asked them about their current farm financial performance, the under 35 category has dropped the least of all the age groups. Okay, so if you look at 65 and over, it was a 117 positive in January of 23. It's now sitting at 77. If you look at under 35, It was about a 133. 130 last January. It's now sitting at 118. Not much of a drop at all. Actually, you can see it. And I'm going to post these slides at RealAgriculture.com. The under 35 has been way more stable than any other age groups when it comes to current farm financial performance. Pretty interesting stuff, I do have to say. The last thing I'll point out about current farm financial performance as it relates to some of the demographics. Not a lot of difference east and west, okay, between in Canada. Where there is a difference, and this has been true throughout, is farm income. So by revenue. The larger the farm, the more revenue you have, the more likely you are to feel better today about your current farm financial performance than a year ago. Okay? So the smallest of farms feeling that they're worse off. They're worse off, and over 5 million in revenue. 36% of growers in that category saying I'm better off than I was a year ago, which I find pretty interesting. So again, the younger you are and the larger the farm, the better you feel about your current farm financial performance. If you have any thoughts about this, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. If you have additional questions about what we've talked about, hey, Sean, what about this? Send me that email. I want to hear from you. Let's engage on the data, and we're going to continue to have different data points every week here on the show, looking at how Canadian farmers are feeling about things, what their thoughts are, and your feedback is a part of that. Hey, the Canadian Crops Convention is heading to Winnipeg this year from March 5th through the 7th. This year's theme is Growing Opportunities and includes a stellar lineup of knowledgeable speakers and networking opportunities. I saw David Frum is going to be there. Very, very interesting. They also got David Hurley. They got just great political panels. It's going to be pretty cool indeed. You can find out more by going to canadiancrops.ca. We'll be right back on Real Ag Radio. Coming up next, it's the top ag news stories of the day right after this.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground. We are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
It's now time for the top ag news stories today here on Real Ag Radio, brought to you by Blackhawk EVO from New Farm. Blackhawk EVO is the next evolution in pre-seed burn-down herbicides powered by Duplasyn. Blackhawk EVO delivers fast, flexible, and complete control of early germinating and winter annual broadleaf weeds. Find out more by going to newfarm.ca. Okay, lots to discuss, so little time. First up, now I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but Canada's opened an office in Manila. So first announced as the host city in June 2023, the Indo-Pacific Agriculture and Agri-Food Office in Manila was officially opened this week by Agriculture and Agri-Food Minister Lawrence MacAulay. The Indo-Pacific region is a key one for Canadian farmers, producers, and the agri-food sector, with Canada's agriculture and agri-food exports to the region totaling $22.8 billion in 2023. The office is going to host a mobile team that will operate from a hub in Manila and work to build strategic partnerships that will grow our export opportunities and increase the demand for Canadian products, according to a release from AFC. Saw numerous organizations chiming in and saying, congratulations. This is good. Canadian Pork Council was one of them, along with others. There's a quote here from Dave Carey. He is Vice President of Government and Industry Relations for the Canadian Canola Growers Association. He said, Canada's 43,000 canola farmers rely on trade. 90% of the canola grown in Canada is exported as seed, oil, and meal. The opening of the IPAAO sends a strong signal to our trading partners in the region that Canada is serious about market access, maintenance, and development. Interesting changing demographics in Canada, according to StatsCan. They say that there are now more millennials than baby boomers in the country, ending the 65-year reign of the post-Second World War generation as the largest cohort in the population. The federal agency noted the change in its newly released population estimate for July 1st, 2023, broken down by age and gender. The baby boomer generation became the largest in Canada in 1958, 7 years before the last baby boomer was even born. They accounted for 40% of the population from the mid-1960s to the early 1970s. Many countries are grappling with the reality of an aging population as baby boomers retire. These changing demographics are expected to affect healthcare needs and government's tax bases. Here in Canada, the Liberal government has pitched higher immigration as part of the solution to problems created by aging demographics. Bayer has plans to slash its dividend by 95% in an effort to dig itself out of a hole created by the acquisition of Monsanto. That saddled the German company with a massive debt and waves of litigation. This is according to Reuters. While a dividend cut was expected, the reduction highlights the challenges facing the drug and crop sciences company as it tries to stem its cash drain, rebuild its pharmaceutical pipeline, and recover from the $63 billion takeover of the owner of Roundup herbicide in 2018. Bayer said it will offer investors only the legal minimum required under German law, paying out 11 euro cents per share for 2023, down from €2.40 last year. There's also still rumors out in the marketplace that Bayer will spin off its crop sciences division, although it was not actually mentioned in this Reuters article. The last time Americans spent this much of their money on food, George H.W. Bush was in office. Terminator 2 Judgment Day was in theaters, and CNC Music Factory was rocking the Billboard charts, according to a story in the Wall Street Journal. CNC Music Factory. Remember, they had a few hits. Good videos. Remember the videos? Yeah. Okay, continued. Eating continues to cost more, even as overall inflation has eased from the blistering pace consumers endured throughout the much of 22 and 23. Prices at restaurants and other eateries were up 5.1% last month compared with January of 23, while grocery costs increased 1.2% during the same period, according to the Labor Department. Relief isn't likely to arrive soon. Restaurant and food company executives say they are still grappling with rising labor costs and some ingredients, such as cocoa, that are only getting more expensive. Consumers, they said, will find ways to cope. In 1991, U.S. consumers spent about 11.4% of their disposable personal income on food, according to data from the U.S. Agriculture Department. At the time, households were still dealing with steep food price increases following an inflationary period during the 1970s. Ontario bean growers will contribute $660,000 towards an industry investment of $2 million in the weed management professorship position based at the Ridgetown campus of the University of Guelph. Ontario's nearly 1,000 dry bean farmers produced a combined average of more than 100,000 acres of kidney, white pea, black turtle, Romano, and Azuki beans, with up to 90% of the crop exported to international markets. And while we're here, we should mention that Real Agriculture has an edible bean school as well. So if you are growing any of those crops, very cool stuff. We've got a lot of content for you. Find that at RealAgriculture.com or on our, of course, you can always find it on our YouTube channel. In other news, investors are increasingly pouring funds into U.S. farmland, viewing it as a lucrative asset amid population growth and resource scarcity. The value of farmland held by investment groups has more than doubled in the past 3 years. Double in 3 years, reaching $16.6 billion by the end of 2023, according to the National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries. This surge is expected to continue due to climate change and the growing population. Factors like COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical events have further boosted agricultural land's appeal to investors, with its resilience against inflation highlighted. Despite concerns raised by some farm organizations Regarding the impact on rural communities, institutional investors remain drawn to farmland as a stable long-term investment. There's a lot of stuff to deal with in that. Listen, there is uncomfortableness for sure from the standpoint of you got to ask yourself the question, at some point we're going to cross the precipice of where farmers don't actually own the farmland and farmers are basically renters. And depending on where you are in North America, that's probably way more prolific than other areas. The other side of it is, if you're a farmer exiting the industry, this has been good for business. No different than urbanization has been good for farm values. So has, everyone's favorite New York hedge fund or teacher's pension plan being interested in farmland. Farmland's been a very good investment. And nowhere is it written that only farmers should participate in that asset. And that's an uncomfortable kind of truth. Now, strategically long-term, does there need to be restrictions? Do we need to relook at this? Yeah, probably. I just don't know what that actually looks like, right? Because as soon as you start to limit who can actually invest in certain assets like farmland, boy, you're involving government in an area where, traditionally people are saying government stay out of my life, and here we're asking them to stay in our life. There's some uncomfortable conversations in this area now, but like I said, long term, does it need to be fixed? It probably does need to be a consideration of what we actually want and what does this actually need to look like. But yeah, that's no surprise on some of those numbers. The U.S. is preparing sanctions on Russia over Navalny's death. The Biden administration is preparing major sanctions against Russia over the death of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. In a White House official said yesterday. The official said details of the penalties would be announced on Friday since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The Biden administration has announced a series of sanctions that the U.S. hoped would hobble Russia economically and militarily. And again, there's a whole debate there whether or not they actually have, because of the increase in the price of some of the commodities and things like that. Russia's made out pretty good. And this has very much become a war of attrition. There is no doubt that's definitely not up for debate anymore whatsoever. The RFA urges Biden administration's ethanol decisions, emphasizes importance of the SAF model, EPA standards, and year-round E15 approval. Renewable Fuels Association President Jeff Cooper emphasized the pivotal role of the Biden administration's decisions regarding ethanol's future. This includes determining the carbon footprint model for sustainable aviation fuel, Environmental Protection Agency's tailpipe emission standards, and approval of year-round E15 use. Cooper highlighted concerns over potential adjustments to ethanol's carbon footprint model and EPA's proposed tailpipe emissions regulations, which could affect ethanol producers' participation in tax credits in the automotive industry's focus on electric cars. Polish farmers have blocked much of Ukraine's western border in protest against what they perceive as an overflow of Ukrainian food products flooding the Polish market and threatening their livelihoods. This blockade has disrupted commercial transportation, resulted in the halt of thousands of Ukrainian trucks, and spillage of Ukrainian grain onto railway tracks. The Ukrainian government sees these protests as detrimental to its economy and its ability to withstand Russia's aggression. The influx of Ukrainian products into European markets, facilitated by the EU's suspension of tariffs and quotas on Ukrainian food products, has exacerbated tensions with local farmers across Europe who argue that it depresses prices and makes it difficult for them to make a living. Again, this feeds into why some of these farmer protests have happened in some of these countries. It hasn't all been about environmental regulations of governments. It has been in some countries, but not in all. Like in countries like Poland, it's very much about this Ukraine commodity issue and Ukrainian products getting into the country. So there's definitely some nuance and some detail there to pay attention to. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Or, of course, you can always call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. I want your feedback on what I said about Minister McCauley at the beginning of the show, as well as some of that Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index related to younger farmers feeling better about their current farm financial performance than some of their older peers. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast brought to you by Authority Strike Herbicide from FMC. Strike twice with 2 Group 14 modes of action and take care of the toughest broadleaf weeds, including kochia, cleavers, Russian thistle, and pigweed. See your local retailer today for more information.